finishing. This is going to probably be the hardest video I'm going to do because there's so many things that finishing encompasses. Such as right now, I'm sanding the flap and elevator fillets that go between the fuselage and the flaps and the elevators. Now, I'm not gluing them on until after the paper's on. For the simple fact, it's easier to put the paper on that way. So sequencing is going to be very difficult, but where we are to date is finally all the woodwork is done. And we have 3 coats of dope on everything. So the procedure is 3 coats of dope on the wing, then 60-40. Then the paper is applied, in this case poly tissue, polyspan, and then 3 to 4 more coats of dope is applied, and don't even try to sand polyspan until you have 3 or 4 coats of clear dope on it. Now, I've been using 60-40 all the way through. Sometimes I use 100% for the first coat, but this time I use 60-40. And finishing is sanding, and I don't want to bore you with the hours and hours of sanding that it takes to finish a model. The paint can be applied with anything, a bug sprayer. When I did motorcycle work, I won some motorcycle shows with motorcycles painted with a spray can. That's back when you could get lacquer in a spray can because you can sand it. And the sanding is what makes the finish. So I've about got this fairing faired in with 80 grit, and I'll finish it off with 220 here. It doesn't have to be ultra smooth because it's going to get super fill on most of it anyway. In the Monado builds I showed, I've showed some finishing techniques. So you're gonna, you really need to kind of observe everything that I'm doing in different segments, because each airplane and each medium varies slightly. Okay, now I have this piece shaped, and we'll pin it on. Let me get a pin here. The most important thing about these fairings is the fit. I see a lot of guys, especially when I went to Huntersville, that the flaps hit the fairings. They try to make the gaps too close to start with. Well, you're going to get a buildup of paint on that fairing. So I tried to fit it, but it has a 32nd of an inch. Now that seems like a mile, but when you put paint on it, it will close rapidly. Now that part I've already done. And we're not going going to glue those on yet anyway, so, but I wanted to get them in there to show you what we've got. Okay, so I have a 32nd of an inch gap around all the seams, including the wingtip, and on the elevator stabilizer, and it does take some time to fit those, so just take your time getting them to fit. And the more time you take, the more precision it'll look when it's finished. The next thing I did was I cut the canopy and fit it. I do it on a belt sander. You can use your favorite method any way you want, but we can't put that on yet. This fuselage is going to have to be tissued today. Now, last night while I was going over this, I saw a hard spot in the balsa wood on the inboard side here in the shape, so I took 220 and I sanded that hard spot out. I've since redoped it because I had to take it right down to the bare wood, so we are ready to go ahead and start papering. Now, I'm probably going to cut the camera, I'll get the paper prepared, and I'll go ahead and paper the fuselage on camera. There's, I don't see any need for footage of me putting 3 coats of dope on. Now I can, start it out the first coat and show you that I'm putting it on, and then stop the camera and put the second coat on. But for someone to watch me brush on 3 coats of dope, that's just totally boring. You operate the controls, make sure you don't hear anything hitting, no binding. These are really smooth and really nice. They ended up being, the hinges on the elevator stabilizer were mine, and the hinges on the flaps were plate hinges, and the reason for that is these are 1/4 inch flaps. 3/8 stabilizer 1/4 inch flaps, and you could not possibly get my type hinges in 1/4 inch. And the next thing I'll do after papering is I'll get this plywood template for the fillets on the stabilizer that go right here, and the wing fairing. I'll use 32nd ply for that. You want a good hard edge, good straight hard edge to putty to. The nose has been Z-epoxied, but the cowl hasn't. We'll have to get to that in a bit. I finished these relatively quickly, so there's not a whole lot of time to set up for the next shop. And I do things sometimes out of sequence from other people where they don't finish any of this stuff until after the airplane's built. Well, the wing was finished or covered before it went into the fuselage, and the elevator stabilizer and the rudder were covered and papered and ready to go before they went into the fuselage. So there's not continuing amounts of dope being put on all these other pieces. Okay, I got the tissue on. I've got 1 coat of dope on it. Now, the tissue install can be seen on the Monado build. I didn't think it was necessary to go through it again on how to install it. You wet it and dope it down. And I'm just lightly, and I mean lightly because there is no dope on it to speak of, sanding out any of the wrinkles that we have here. And then we're going to apply another coat of dope. Because I thin this dope out some more, it's about 80% thinner, I'd say. We're going to do about 5 coats. Five coats at 80%. And the reason I did this is I want a super good bond to the fuselage of this tissue, because we're going to do some extensive taping on it, and I certainly don't want the silk span pulling up. So we'll get another coat on it. And while we're waiting for dope to dry, I'm not going to run the camera. But this is all in the same day. We're on, I think it's either, yeah, I think it's day 20. After, this will take me a few hours to get this, you know, between drying and sanding. It'll be a couple of hours. And the next step will be to mount the wing fairings, and then we're going to go move on to the superfill. The superfill will get DC 540 on it. I had stated that I wasn't going to use superfill anywhere, but, come to the realization, superfill is just too darn good. Or the DC 540. And it'll get a little more aggressive sanding on the on this next sand out as far as wrinkles go. One thing I'd like to say, if you got silk span going, transitioning from the fuselage to the wing, make sure you cut it out. Because what happens there is, as the dope dries, it will pull and lift the fillet. So make sure that it's make sure that it's cut right there at the corner between the wing joint and the fuselage. And I'll check that everywhere before I put any superfill down. Now we have some wrinkles in this silk span because of the massive compound curves. But that's okay. We'll sand those out and dope over the top of those. We're not worried about that. And the sequencing was important on the Z-epoxy nose was done first, because we're going to feather the silk span into that fiberglass Z-epoxy nose. So we've cut the finishing down into different segments, where we did the wing first, and sanded it out. We did the elevator stabilizer and the rudder. I can see I have a few buggers there. I'm just going to have to get the 3M putty. I also need to get a piece of tissue on this right here. Now, some people don't finish with tissue at all. I do. Make sure that all the wood is covered. Because if you don't, you'll wish you did. It'll stick out like a sore thumb. There. This is the spot right over the stabilizer next to the rudder. I had missed getting tissue on. tissue there, tissue there. It's all on the underside, I know for sure. So, we'll cut the camera. We're going to wait a half an hour and put another coat of dope on it. And then the sanding begins. When you look at this, you want to make sure the dope saturates the silk span. It's white when it starts from the moisture in it, and it has to turn clear, and you can actually see it binding to the wood. Force it down, make sure that it's binding to the wood. Because if you don't, when you put that 3M fine line tape on it and lift it up, it'll peel the silk span off. And I talked about this on the forum. Most of the problems in finishing with lifting paint comes from the lack of thinner. Dope is a chemical bond, meaning that the chemical reacts to the coat underneath it, softens the coat underneath it, and adheres to it. Urethanes are mechanical bond, meaning that it takes tooth. You have to have scratches in the paint because the thinner is not very hot. It's called reducer with enamels, such as urethanes and hobby epoxy and things like that. So you have to have some type of tooth that it can adhere to and grab and hold on. But with lacquers or dope, dope is glue. If you use enough thinner, it will melt the coat underneath it, and it all ends up becoming one unitized piece. And we'll talk about why I like dope, and it is the most forgiving medium as far as finishing medium. The vehicle, there's three parts to the paint. The pigment, which is clear in this case. So it's, and the vehicle, that's the delivery chemical, and the thinner, that thins these other two components. So what happens with dope is that 60% of its total weight gases off because the thinner gases off, it evaporates, the thinner's gone, and it takes some of the vehicle with it, leaving the pigment on. Whereas in urethanes and enamels, the thinner in that just waters down the pigment and the vehicle, and it never evaporates away. Very little evaporation, so whatever you spray on stays on. With dope, 60% of it goes away. Now, if I wasn't so skittish and set in my ways, I would probably try some water-based automotive paint. For the simple fact is, the thinners, water evaporates and evaporates 100%, meaning that it should be 50% lighter. But I'm not sure about the pigments, and I just don't have enough experience in water-based automotive paints. I probably should do some research on it, what you have to do, but I think you have to top it with urethane, and then that just defeats its purpose. I'm sure that for an electric airplane, a water-based automotive paint would be perfect because you need no fuel proofing. And even dope, as I found in my last Monado build, even the dope of today is not fuel proof at all. Zero. So you have to spray. I sprayed urethane on the cowl. And the only urethane paint that I know is 100% impervious to nitromethane is a paint called Sunfire. It's made by Sherwin-Williams. It's used at the Bonneville Salt Flats. It'll withstand 40% nitro, and for prolonged periods of time. But you pay for what you get. It's really expensive. So this will probably conclude the finishing or the clearing of the fuselage. I mean, the repetition just goes on. I'm going to finish the wheel pants in Z-epoxy. I'm not going to just clear dope them because they take a lot of abuse, so they're going to get Z-epoxied. I'm not sure whether I'll glass them or not because they're already 49 grams. I can't figure out how to get them any lighter. But that includes the wire, the wheel, and the pant. That's 3.5 ounces for the gear. I probably would like to lose at least a half an ounce. 3 ounces is, but you got to have wheels. You got to have a way to get it on the ground. So we're going to just let this dry, and I'll be back. And I'm not sure you want to see me sand. I'll show, a few minutes of the sanding. But so many people have problems finishing. Been, I don't know, an hour on the second coat. I'm sanding the wrinkles out of it, getting it flat with 320. I was thinking that as I was sanding, which I do a lot, I'd like to state on my byline why I say the finish starts with the first piece of wood cut. If you cut every piece to fit close, perfect is a long stretch, but as perfect as humanly possible. You cut every piece to fit close, it takes less sanding. And there's already more sanding in an airplane than anything else. There's more sanding in an airplane than cutting wood, than actual application. It's all about sanding. And the better sander you become, the better finisher you'll be. So for me to teach, I can only show you the steps. I can't teach you to sand on the internet. You have to have an eye for it. But this fuselage is we're ready for a third coat. I'll put the third coat on it. We'll let it dry. And I'll put in the flap fairings today. And probably the super fill today. So this is the third coat. I've sanded it most of the wrinkles out. Each time we'll sand more and more out of it. Some people say no more than 2 coats a day, well, whatever. I've had real good luck with my finishing sequences. The finishes come out light and very respectable. I haven't won a concourse yet at the Nats, but I kind of feel that's a popularity contest. And I'm not real popular. However, there were some outstanding airplanes to win. Phil Granderson, Kaz Minato, his Hellcats spectacular. Windy, His airplanes are painted very nicely. They weigh too much for my taste, but you put enough paint on something, you know, you get a good finish. But we're not looking for that. We're looking for light. Huh, I got some poly span here. Where I overlapped it there. No one can take away from Wendy's airplanes. They're absolutely gorgeous. A little bit of hair coming up on the poly span. I wish my shop was twice its size, then I could use my paint stand. If it was twice what I have here, I could produce more airplanes. I know, like I need to produce more airplanes. I need to sell some of these. Viper 1 electric is going to be for sale. If anybody's interested, it'll come ready to fly with one battery. Those are the Thunder Power 2700 milliamp 5S batteries. I just have too many airplanes. I have to start getting rid of some of them. I need to kind of cut my Air Force down to 2 or 3 airplanes for the events that I'm going to fly. PA with a backup airplane. I'm going to do classic this year and scale. So that's that would be 4 airplanes, and I got about 15 here now. You don't crash them. They last a long time. Got a feeling I'm going to enjoy classic again. That's basically why I built the Monado XL with the Super Tiger in it, because it brings you back to your childhood. There's nothing that runs like a Super Tiger 60. So anyway, third coat of dope. We'll let this dry, be back, sand it out. We're going to put in the fairings here and on the elevator stabilizer, and then we'll get to the super fill. So we'll see you in a short. Okay, I get a lot of compliments on my fillets and fairings of the flaps and elevators, and I'm going to show you how I get them lined up. First off, I take 2 sticks of balsa wood, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch thick, one on the top, one on the bottom. I put 2 clamps on it, one at the leading edge, one at the trailing edge, and that gets the 0 elevator incidence. Means it's flying level. Next, remember I've tapered up these fairings before we got to this stage. And gotta get the CA. I zero. You gotta start somewhere. So I start at the elevator, and I zero it up till it's right in the middle. Sight down the elevator, make sure it's perfectly level. Zero that up So it's right in the middle of the fairing, and a drop of CA. Now, you think, well, we'll just glue it. Well, we're not going to glue it yet. Not until I get the other ones on. So then I go around and we're going to do the other side. I just have no room in this shop here. Very small, very small. And we're going to sight it in from the back to make sure that they're both equal. That's in the middle there, and it's not, so we got to bring that down to there. I'm going to have to tweak that. So make sure they're equal. This one's up a little bit, so I'll have to tweak the horn before I put that on. And then a drop of CA. This is very important. I notice all the time on the forum, people are trying to tweak flaps, and you got to do this up front. Make sure the wing is straight. Make sure that the elevators are zeroed, and the flaps are zeroed before you glue them on. Okay, now that's zero. They're not glued on. We're just tacking them. So next we do the flap. Now with the elevators zero, and if we did our job right, the flaps should be zero and should mate the outboard fairing, and we're going to make the fillet zero to the flap. I'll explain why I tack them here in a second. So we got zero on the outboard here. This is zero. That still needs to be bent down, so we're going to bring this down to the center of the flap, and we'll tack it. Just a drop, in case I got to move them. Zero on the flap, zero on there. Yeah, we're going to have to tweak that down. And now one more, and that'll get you, this will get the wing fairings on. I've already pre-fit everything, meaning I took the time to sand the clearances. Now this one here is a little bit trickier. The last fairing, because you have to look from the back of the fuselage. It has to be zeroed on the tips, zeroed in the center and zeroed. You got to look at all four places all at the same time for the last bearing. So I got to turn it here a little bit so I can sight down the back. Get in the center. I got 0, 0, 0 on the tip, 0 on the tip, so that's where it goes right there. And one drop of CA. Now stand back and look at it. That's good. And that's how I get the fairings lined up. And we'll go ahead and glue them off camera, because it's nothing but being careful not to drip glue down into the horn. So we'll see. Oh, we're still finishing, but we're on a different section of finishing. I'm just detailing the model today to get ready for actual spraying. We'll spray primer tomorrow probably, or the next. You know, whatever it takes to get the job done. But anyway, I want to talk about these. I was going to just use plywood gussets at the elevator, and then put putty, you know, the superfill, in for these gussets. But on this airplane, according to the plans, they're just so big that I'm afraid that all that putty would weigh too much all the way back there on the tail. We're going to use putty on the leading edge of the wing, because I had good success with that on my Continental XL. But we're going to try these fillets. And what I did was I fit a piece to the leading edge in the fuselage, and cut the shape, and now we're going to bevel this leading edge so that this can be recessed into the leading edge of the stabilizer. And how I do that is I have a Dremel router table, and we're going to take a router bit that looks like this. It's semi-round on the end. We'll zoom in here. Semi-round on the end, it's 1/4 inch, and we'll route down the center of that piece. So I put it in the router, tighten it up. Be ever so careful when you're using. I still have my Dremel plugged in, but if you accidentally hit the switch and that bit is on your finger, I'm just about positive that it would take your finger off. So we'll screw this router onto the table. You know, for a plunge router, it sure doesn't go very. Allow me to go very shallow. That's it. So I've got to change that. We're only going to drop it in about 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to sand it with a piece of 3/8 dowel with paper on it, because I want it to fit perfectly on the leading edge. That should be better. We'll make a pass with a test piece before we do this. couple clamps and clamp it to the bench. This is just a Dremel router. They're cheap. A Dremel router table. I think I paid like $21 or $22 for it. Of course, it's been a while now. I bought all this stuff when I was making real good money. So now we'll get a piece of scrap. Let's cut a piece of scrap. Adjust this table up. That looks pretty good, actually. Yep. Okay, this is going to be a valid concept, but we're going to have to go about it a different way. So we made an experiment. We saw that it's going to work. The problem is the actual routing of the part. It kind of ate up the end. So I'm going to route it first, then cut it out. Concept good, execution bad. So there's the piece. We route this as a whole piece. Sand it as a whole piece too. Now before I go any farther and make another one, I'll get it cut out, sand it to shape, and see if it's going to work. So I'll cut it on the bandsaw here. Up. Okay, here's the piece right here. It was a good idea what I had, but I just went about it the wrong way. You look here, come on now. You look here, it's going to, the trailing edge or the leading edge is going to sit right in this groove, and this will go up against the fuselage. Now, I've left the line on by quite a ways so that it didn't break off. We'll sand it in once I test fit it. So let's get the airplane and see how it looks, if it's going to work. If it does, I'll make another one. Then we'll tack them on and sand them to shape. Because I really don't want the extra weight back there of all the putty, but we can if we have to. Here's the airplane. Here's the piece I made. And that's going to work perfect. It'll get glued on and sanded to shape. It actually needs a little more sanding that direction. This doesn't even weigh a gram, as opposed to if I put putty on it, I know it weigh over a gram. So now it fits perfectly. So I'll pin that on, or make a pattern and pin that on, and get the other one made up. See here. Okay. And this is probably pretty boring watching this, but these are the things that you have to do for an outstanding model. And it's all trial and error and fit. Just think about it. I will rough shape that before it goes on there. However, I won't final shape it until it's glued on. The reason why I'll rough shape it is so I get it on straight. I'll have to measure down from the leading edge from the datum line. Let's see how that looks. Ah, yeah, it's way up. That's where it goes, right there. Don't even have to. I just use the datum line itself. You can't believe the putty that'll save. And wood is lighter than putty. And in fact, I might not even rough shape it. I might just tack it on and shape it as it sits. That is good. So let's cut the other one up, see if we can get it. You know what, I forgot. I have to. Glad I didn't glue it, because I have to do the other one first before I can go any farther. So we have to grind or router out the groove first. One more time. dowel. There it is. Too much stuff. So I know for a fact this is an exact copy. It will fit on either side, because I already had tested it before. At least the test piece would. And yes, it does. So we have to make it exactly like this. I'm not going to bore you with the shaping of this, because it'll probably take an hour or so. But I wanted you to see, I spent 2 hours on fit on the flaps for the fairings on both ends to make sure that we had equal gaps all the way around, which I thought, you know, it's overkill, but this model is something special to me. And I haven't built one of these in 20 years. About 94, I guess I had one of these. That looks good. I'll fit the other side a little better, and then we'll glue it on and sand them out. So basically what I'm doing are these pieces right here. This side needs to be sanded a little more. So I'm going to cut the camera, keep sanding and tinkering with this, and we'll see you in a bit. Okay, we're 2 hours into this project. I finally got them on there, sanded, shaped. We'll go ahead and apply some dope and tissue to them so that they don't crack, just like the fairings back here. I'll get you a look at it. This is what we did right here. I've got them sanded in pretty good. Would have been nice if we'd have had just one solid piece that wide, but that would have been a pretty wide piece of 3/8. If I'd have done it in one piece, it would have took a piece 5 inches wide. But that's alright. We got it in there. It'll be fine once it's puttied. So go ahead and I'll put some dope on it. And this is all the finishing. It's all about these little details. If you want a super, a model that's just outstanding, it's the details that make it. It's not just putting some dope on and saying, well, there it is. It's how much time do you want to spend on it. I got a lot of time in this airplane. We're coming up on the 200-hour mark. So we'll get 3 coats on that and get the tissue laid down on it. And then we'll come back. I'm going to go ahead and cut the plywood pieces that go up here. I'm not going to use balsa wood like they say. Now, I don't know. Maybe I should try that. I've never tried it before. I've just had real good luck with the... nah, we'll just go with what I know. That's pretty far forward anyway. So we won't worry about that. I'll go with superfill on that. We'll put the plywood gussets in there and then fill it up with superfill and make that look good. So we're at the end of the day today, day 20. It's probably 6 o'clock at night, I guess. I'll probably continue to sand through the evening. We're still on day 20. I've got many hours in it today working on the finish. I showed you that I did, today we did the wing fillets, and I did the leading edge on the stabilizer. I've got all those sanded in. I got the whole airplane pretty much sanded in. And we're going to end this day with the leading edge of the wing. Now, they showed balsa wood in this area here, but I'm not going to use balsa wood. I'm going to use a piece of plywood. This is 32nd plywood cut to a gusset shape that is a huge, huge gusset. And we're going to glue that in this area right here. And the reason why I use the plywood is it gives a nice sharp edge for that fillet that'll come down and fair. Now this is Z-epoxy. This has been hardened up so we can sand on this and get it to flow perfectly into that. I'm not gonna be doing Z-epoxy tonight. But let me I think I probably should move the camera so that you get a better idea of exactly how I'm going to do this and make it look correct. So give me a second, I'll move the camera and we'll get a zoom in shot. I've got the camera moved and I'm going to show you how I'm going to install this. Now I got a machinist scale here and I measured down from the datum line right here to the center of the wing. And then we're going to measure out to the front and get a dot on there, which I've already marked, so that this particular piece is going to be straight, equal with the datum line of the fuselage. Now I will just tack it on so that I can eyeball it and make sure that I have it straight. And then of course, this way it's straight on the leading edge, so it's a little tricky to get on and get it on perfect, but it really adds a flair to this model if you can get it on there perfect. So I hold it up there, we'll tack it on here if we can get the glue to come out. There we go. And you follow suit just like this on the other side. So I tack it at the front. It's on the line. Now we look at it from the front and get it parallel to the wing. Tack it on the back. Oh, come on. And make make sure that it's parallel to the wing. That looks good. And then glue it. And then we'll just putty it in. I've already drawn the radius on it, obviously, and fit them so that they fit perfectly on the airplane. So now I have to do this side, and we want to make sure that it's the same distance down. So let's see, that was 3 1/4. This one's a little bit trickier because we want to make sure that they're straight across from each other looking from the front. Otherwise it looks goofy. We don't want goofy. So you sight from the front. Measure this again here. Put a mark on the center of the wing. Measure. It should be the same. It is. And I use a machinist scale because it measures down to 64ths. Hold it up there. Now this one we're just going to give it a tack, and then we're going to hold it up and eyeball it. Because trust me, if you get this off and don't get it exactly correct, it will drive you nuts. At least it will me. That looks pretty good. That looks real good. Okay, I'll glue it on. I've tacked it in all 3 spots, and we're just going to lift it up and eyeball it for the last time. That's good. And then glue it down. Hit it with a kicker. And turn it over and do the bottom side. I have not had any problems using CA holding these on. I think because of the superfill is so strong that it kind of acts as an epoxy. Let's make sure we got that right. No. Glue. But this is finishing 101, a lot of tinkering. pretty close. If you get these plywood pieces on and you don't like it, you can always cut them off. Once you get the super fill on, you're pretty much committed. Why is my bottle stopped up again? There we go. Okay, I'm going to set it on the ground. So these are the pieces we just put in, the fairings. They'll all be puttied in and blended in real nicely. Better look from the side here to make sure we got them on there straight and square. It looks pretty good. These are the pieces that I worked on all day, getting the fitment on this and the fitment here correct. And then I showed you when I jigged up that thing in the router, we routed this and got this put on. We'll do a nice fillet in there. I've got the tips all fitting well, and I just went around the whole thing and did the fitment, and then of course I tissued the fuselage today, been doping and sanding in between. It's not ready to start painting yet, but we're getting close. I'm thinking that one more day of tinkering, you know, I'll get the fillets. The fillets will probably take all day tomorrow to blend in and get real nice. And that spot I was talking about is right here. It's a little low. I should have puttied it before I covered it, and I might have to cut the covering open here, putty it, and then recover it. I'm not sure what I'll do there. Or I might just grind that high spot down. I don't know what exactly happened. I think probably I'll grind that high spot down with some 220. See if I can't get that hard spot out right there. I don't like it. You won't be able to see it when it's finished, guaranteed. But that is the Continental that we're doing for Control Line Craftsman. I'm hoping that you're enjoying the build. I'm hoping you're learning something. So we'll see you tomorrow. I'll go ahead and edit this up and post it tonight. Tight lines.